What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, divorce coach Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the show. This is episode 160. The main topic on this one is going to be closure. But first, as I've been doing, which I'm really fucking digging, I'm going to read to you some new listen locations. We'll start last, I guess, sort of. Scottsdale, Arizona. Shout out to you who listened to the loneliness episode. Shout out to, once again, a comma situation. So no city, just the whole entire state of Missouri apparently got together and listened to episode one. I'm fucking old and can't read anymore. I think it says 156. That was the I had no one there for me episode. Here's a crazy one. Nairobi County. I'm assuming that's Africa. Isn't that fucking Africa? You could see it's pretty clear I'm American because geography is not my strong suit. I know where I live. I think that's Africa. That's just fucking weird. They listened to episode 157. If that's not Africa and I'm an idiot, feel free to tell me in the comments or send me an email or whatever. Sounds like anyway, listen to episode 157, Overcoming Challenges with Dr. Jeff Karp. And lastly, certainly not leastly, is Auburn, Washington, episode 158, which was How to Do the Work solo episode. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you got something from it. Hopefully you stick around. In other, I don't know if it's news, but other aspects of what Buzzsprout now does is fan mail. And I'm fucking excited to say I got some more fan mail. This one definitely much more positive. This is, and I hope you don't mind me reading this. Um, I don't think you would, but it says, "Hey man, my name is Dan. What's up, Dan? Listening from the UK. I love the UK. Divorced back in April after she had an affair and moved in with him. Well, that fucking sucks. Sorry to hear that. Your podcast has been a great help and very early on and inspired me to do something similar. I've been working on it, but I find myself running short on episode topics. How do you never run out of things to talk about?" Boy, there's some answers there. I think there's so much to this. And I worry about it at times too, but I think part of it is because I'm in the Divorce Support for Men Facebook group, and so I see a lot of posts from a lot of people, and sometimes that will remind me of things to talk about or enlighten me about some things that maybe I should talk about. But I think there's just so much to this, and it's not just divorce, obviously, right? Certainly it's not just the legalities, which I really don't talk about too much at all anyway. But I can, and I probably will. I'm sure I'll have other lawyers. In fact, I had a lawyer reach out to me recently asking to come on the podcast, which is always pretty weird and cool. I think we're trying to figure out what topics, and I think we've narrowed it down, but that'll probably be in the future. So obviously there's the legalities of it. There's things like dating. That's a part of it. Again, that's one of the things that I've obviously covered on here, but I'm not focused on. But and then children, obviously, if you have them, there's a lot there to be mined because there's a lot there. There's a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges with being a parent in general. And then you throw divorce in the mix, there's even more questions and situations and stresses and shit that comes with it. So, and then lastly, the thing that I focused on, and the bulk, the majority of what I focus on is mental health. Trying to get our minds right, so to speak, or at least try to understand what that even fucking means. Get our minds right. So I think there's just so many aspects to this. Again, I say this all the time. If it was easy, there wouldn't be a need for a podcast. And because it's complex, then that means there are many things to look at and different perspectives, and I talk about some of the things that I talk about. I probably had, loneliness. How many guests have I had on that have talked about loneliness, anxiety? There's another guest coming up. I'm going to record. I think I've got 3 or so scheduled over the next few weeks, to discuss, to interview, and one of those topics is anxiety, and I know I've covered that more than once for sure, probably at this point maybe 5 or 6 times, because it's something I struggle with a little bit. It's much better for me, but I have, and because of that, I know how difficult it is. So, and everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people have their own thoughts and modalities and tips and tricks around that. So it's always great to get other perspectives. So I think if you look through the totality of the podcast, of all of the episodes, you're going to see some repeat, topics, and I never feel bad about that. I don't feel like I'm repeating myself, even if I am. I mean, I do that in general myself personally, but repeating topics isn't bad, because again, it's different perspectives, or there's so much to be gained from just communicating with other folks. There's so much to be gained from another person's point of view. So I I mean, I do worry about that on occasion, Dan, but there's just so much to this. And I think if you just pay attention to what people struggle with, you're going to have endless things to talk about. And also, I'll say this: you don't have to put an episode out every week. I put that pressure on myself, but I don't have to, and I'm not even sure why I do, other than I just like that. I like this staggered approach of interview solo that I've been doing. I guess I do want to be successful, if I'm being honest. But I need to put in some different efforts, probably, and I'm gonna start looking at some things. One of those things actually that I did do to sort of shift, and let me say, Dan, thanks so much for the text. Actually, is what it is. That's really cool, and I wish you the best of luck. Feel free to shoot me an email, and we could probably jump on the Zoom and just have a conversation if you want. Um, Feel free anytime, and that goes for anybody. I know long ago I said, when I had my coaching program, that I would get upset because people would book calls with me and they would just want to talk with me. And I understand that, and I sympathize with that, because man, when I first went through it, I just wanted to talk to. I would talk to anybody I could to talk about it, to share my pain. It just always made me feel a little bit better. But I would get frustrated when people would book a call, and I would think, "Oh, I might have a new client," and it was very clear that they just wanted to talk to me. And so I think I said that in an episode. Don't book a call if you just want to talk to me. But if you just want to talk to me, just reach out. I mean, it happens all the time, and I don't mind. I can't promise you I'm going to get back to you right away, or um, that I'm going to be able to help. I'll do my best, but I don't mind. It's pretty fucking cool to get things like fan mail. I tell you. And that, by the way, that's what they call it. I don't know if I can call it that. That's what they call it. But anyway, so I made a subtle change to the title of the podcast. And it's not gonna, the sign's not gonna change. I mean, that fucking sign was $200, so I'm not buying a new sign. But um, just for when I started thinking about, people discovering the podcast, and I made this subtle change a little while ago. I made an initial subtle change a little while ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 6 months to a year, maybe, I'm not sure. The title of it used to be just Rising Phoenix Podcast, but at some point I added Men Rising from Divorce after that. So it was Rising Phoenix Podcast, Men Rising from Divorce. And I did that because I thought that if it wasn't in the title, then how would you, if people searched for it, although it was in the description of the podcast, a podcast for men going through an unwanted divorce, I thought it would be better for search results if divorce was in the title. And so what I've done, and it sort of further that, is technically the podcast is now Men Rising from Divorce, a Rising Phoenix podcast. And I did that mainly because of the search function. Like when you go on YouTube or you just search divorced men or divorced men's podcast, there are some sites where mine does come up, but it's not enough. So I hope that that subtle change allows for more eyeballs. I hope. I don't know. It's just something I'm trying. It's not something that somebody recommended to me. It just makes sense to me. If people are searching for a podcast for men going through divorce, then you might want to call your podcast something around that. Cordell and Cordell, the law firm, has it locked down because their podcast is, I believe, Divorced Men's Podcast. So they beat me to it. But I love the Rising Phoenix idea or theme, and I hope someday. And why I put a Rising Phoenix podcast is because I hope that maybe someday there'll be a divorced men getting fit, a Rising Phoenix podcast. Men men's legal advice, men's divorce legal advice, or something. I don't know what the fuck I would name it. A Rising Phoenix podcast. And I do that because I worked for a long time ago for a company that was a very large company, still is a very large company, and they just kept buying companies. But it would be like XYZ company, ABC company or whatever. And I always kind of thought that was just kind of cool. It kind of, bundled them under the same umbrella or what the fuck ever. And I just thought it sounded cool. So it's a subtle change. I made the change in the main directory. I changed it on YouTube as well. And maybe it'll generate some more views. There's some other things I could do. I don't know a whole lot of fuck all about SEO, search engine optimization. I don't know a fuck ton about that. I don't think hashtags are as important as they used to be. In fact, I was watching a video about how YouTube doesn't give two fucking shits about hashtags, but I think Instagram does, and probably some others, probably TikTok. Obviously, if you are following me on TikTok, I haven't put a fucking video out in forever. I bought that software Choppity, and I thought it was cool, but it became, the clips it was picking out, I didn't love, and it became almost a chore, not almost, it became a chore to pick out clips to like, because it would suggest something, and I was like, man, if it would just move it 20 seconds this way or that way, but then I had to finagle it, and I was like, it defeats the fucking purpose of this program. No offense to Choppity, fucking don't sue me. It's a good program. It's just it wasn't nailing it for me personally. So maybe eventually I used to have a guy who edited my podcast, and he would pull clips for me, and he was super cheap, but he disappeared. I don't know what the fuck happened to him. It was weird because I paid him. There's never any issues. So I don't know. Hopefully the dude's all right. But anyway, I made that subtle change. Hopefully it'll help. I don't have any intention of going anywhere, and it would be cool to be able to someday add other podcasts to this and make a podcast network for divorced men, not just mine. And I think maybe someday it would be cool to totally shift mine to just mental health. I'm pretty much there, but I'm not 100%. And I'm probably going to have lawyers on again. Like I said, someone reached out recently. I'm probably going to do fitness again because I think that's an important part. There's many things to be covered, and it would be cool if I could separate it out and make not me. I don't have the fucking time, but have other folks and create a podcast network for men going through divorce. So anyway, on to the topic at hand. This is a big one for a lot of folks, and Dan, back to your question. How I can't remember exactly what it was. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. I think essentially it was, how do you not run out of topics? This is one that I don't specifically know why it popped into my head. I don't know why it came to me like this is something you should talk about. I have no idea, but it did, and that's closure. And closure is one of those things I certainly struggled with. I wanted her to say she was sorry or admit she was wrong or something of that nature. I wanted validation more than, I guess, closure. And they're sort of side by side, I think. in a lot of ways. But I guess a lot of folks feel like closure to them is someone admitting that, you know, they were wrong for doing it, or it was wrong, or you know, or they're sorry, or things of that nature. And they want a sort of mea culpa, but you're never. I shouldn't say you're never. I know of one man that got that sort of I'm sorry. And I'm going to get to a quote that I love about closure, but I'm going to talk about this because this was always illuminating or enlightening to me. So this gentleman, I won't name his name. He was someone that I coached, and he had to live with his now ex-wife for quite a long time. I want to say maybe even 2 years, maybe a year and a half, quite a long time. While they tried, or they did the nesting thing, essentially. But she had the affair partner was where she would go, but because they lived together and they had children, and so they had to interact in a very, you know, close quarters kind of way. He was able to get sort of an apology. Not that she, you know, had regrets necessarily, but and I don't remember the nuance to her apology, but I remember him saying that he essentially got something of that nature. And and I don't know, I don't talk to him anymore. I haven't talked to him for a long time, and that's a whole other story. But um, he was one of the more bitter, angry people that I've ever come across. And so, why do I say that? Not to knock him, and if he does listen or whatever, sorry, man. You probably know who you are. I'm not knocking you. I'm just saying that the closer you think you want, I seen someone get it firsthand, and it didn't change anything. It didn't help them. It didn't really make a fucking bit of difference, at least in terms of their view on it. It didn't put a bow on it. It didn't suddenly make it okay. It didn't change really kind of anything. I think that it was nice to hear in some ways, but I didn't see a change in how he viewed it. So therefore, I think that we want things. We it sounds good. Like I want her to say sorry. I want her to admit that it was wrong, and then I can move on. Because to us it's very wrong. It's very hurtful. It's very damaging, devastating. Of course, someone should say sorry for that. You know, whether it be cheating and lying and all these kinds of things, right? Of course, they should if they just said that, if they just did that. But the truth is it isn't going to change how you see it. It isn't going to change that it happened. It isn't going to change how you feel about it. Like the pain is still going to be there. It's not going to take the pain away. It in theory, in thought, but someone apologizing, someone acquiescing to their wrong doesn't change the things you felt because of their actions. So I want to read you a quote, and this is actually in John Kim's book, Single on Purpose. And this quote hit me. It's by an author named Sylvester McNutt III. Never heard of him. I looked him up, and he's got, I think it said his website, like 10 different books. One of them sounds pretty cool. Something about living your best life or something like that, or living the life you deserve, something of that nature. Probably put it on my to read list. But anyway, this is one of the things John Kim does in Single on Purpose. I don't know if he does it. I can't remember if he did it in Used to Be a Miserable Fuck, but he certainly did it in Single on Purpose. He would put quotes at the beginning. I think MC does this too. MC McDonald. I think she did it in Unbroken. He puts quotes at the beginning of a chapter, and I don't remember which chapter it was. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. Anyway, so without further ado, closure happens right after you accept that letting go and moving on is more important than projecting a fantasy of how the situation could have been. Let that marinate a little bit there. It's more important to let go and look to the future is what this is how I interpret it. It's more important to look to the future rather than look to the past or add it in a way that was idealized or yeah, I guess idealized is kind of the right word, where it's, you look back and you think about this great thing and it was going so well or whatever, or it was a really good marriage or whatever. In that, if I could just get back to that, or if I could just get her to feel bad about ruining that, right? That it was this great thing and she ruined it. And if she would say that she did, I would be able to just move on. Just tell me it was shitty. Validate my feelings. And I understand the need for it, but again, it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't take away or replace the pain. What does is work and focus and mindset. I don't know what order of those things, and there's probably some other shit you could throw in there too. But I think once you start looking to the future and think about what can be, instead of looking back and going what was, and analyzing it, whether it be looking at it, looking for her faults or your faults or whatever. And by the way, I don't think that ever stops. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can still, again, back to whatever fucking episode it was, where the duality thing, you can still look back and think about these things from time to time. It's where is your focus? These questions, I think, are going to come up maybe for the rest of our lives, because we're going to be, if we have children, we're going to be constantly reminded, and maybe even not, but certainly with children, you're going to be almost constantly reminded that you're divorced. Because if you have kids and you go to events, you arrive separately. You don't arrive in the same car anymore. You have to figure out arrangements on who's going where and who's taking what and when and whose day is it and whose weekend, and that shit's gonna, and whose holiday. That shit's gonna always remind you. And by the way, that's why I said, without children too, because holidays, restaurants that you went to, et cetera, et cetera, all these things are going to come up and they're going to remind you of these things. So it's almost impossible not to have these moments of wondering, what could have been, type of mindset, type of thought. It's almost impossible not to have moments of blame, pointing the finger, and feeling angry at the person that caused this shit that we're all in. But if you can move away from that more often than not, and worry about what lies ahead, what is your life going to look like now? What do you want it to look like? What are the things you wanted to do that you couldn't, et cetera, et cetera? All these things that are probably been talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. It's not about past anymore. And that's where, again, that duality comes in, because the past is always going to be right there with you in some ways. These memories are deeply ingrained in our lives. I can't ever have a Christmas and not. And now I will say, maybe when I have someone new in my life, that will change. Maybe I'll go through a Christmas with a new partner, woman, friend, lady. I don't even know. That's one of the things that here's a fucking rabbit hole. I don't know how many out there have this weird kind of thing but I think about, when I think of girlfriend, I feel like that's such a teenage word. And I don't know what I would call, and then if you call them partner, people are going to look at you, and I know it shouldn't matter what people think, but fucking whatever, everyone worries about what people think. You're going to like, that's going to sound weird. Partner, like law firm, or like, are you now a homosexual? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, did you completely like fucking just change who you are? Like, so what the fuck do you call them? I guess girlfriend just sounds so high school. Anyway, I don't know if anyone else out there has these thoughts, but I sure as fuck do. Yeah. So anyway, maybe once I have a new person, we'll call them that, maybe then I won't reflect so much so during things like Christmas. Although I don't know how, on the years they're not here in the morning, how the fuck, even if someone was here, how would that not be something that I would not think about and miss? I mean, I think it's nearly fucking impossible. And again, I think if we take this, God, I see again a lot. Fucking A. I think if we take this view that it's okay to have sort of multiple thoughts about things, it's okay to miss things and feel badly about things, but it's the majority of it or the focus. Can we take that input of that feeling of sadness in the moment, thinking about my family isn't together on Christmas morning, and then focus it on our new life? Yeah, but I'm gonna see them, in a couple of hours, and I got this great gift for them, and I've really gotten closer with my kids over the last whatever. If you can take those moments and stop looking back, or if you can take those moments when you're looking back and shift your focus to the future, I think that's closure. I don't think there will be anything that could happen that would ever wrap it up in a bow in a way that we want it to, that would make it true closure, or what we perceive as closure, or expect as closure. So if you're at any point in this and you're expecting that, I'm really actually very sorry to say you're not going to get it. And even if you do, in the case of someone that I know that got sort of a apology or whatever, that didn't change their life. It didn't make them less bitter and less angry. Now, of course, there's other factors. She was with the affair partner and staying with the affair partner, and she's moving in with the affair partner, and so are his kids. And there are other factors, but that one magic bullet what we think is a magic bullet didn't change a fucking thing. And that's sad. I think in a lot of ways we look for the big bows in life, the answers or the conclusions or the satisfaction of sort of the end to something. But a lot of times we don't, that's just not possible. When we think about, I think about like the death of my father, there's no closure there, in terms of like there's no me viewing it in a way that's like, oh, that's okay. I get it now. Like it's okay. I'm now at peace with. I mean, at a point you get to acceptance, but I mean, it's never, it's not a fond memory or a thought. Think about that. I haven't spoken to my father in 25 years. That's a long time. And so there's no bow around that that's going to make it okay. Like I can sit here and think about it now and get emotional. So my dad was like my biggest supporter, and at 22 years old, he was taken from me. And there's no amount of words or exercises that can make that be a positive thing, or certainly that, but or a thing that can be closed in some kind of way that makes it feel okay, or you just have to accept it. And that's kind of what you have to do with this. Yep, it happened, it's over, fucking hurts and it sucks, but what's next? Where am I going now? Hopefully this helps. Hopefully it provides some kind of insight and can maybe put you on a track of getting to your own personal closure. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Since my separation in July of 2019, I have done an incredible amount of work on myself. I've had many different therapists, life coaches, and went through different programs. I've taken all that I've learned and put it into my own program called Forged by Fire. If you are interested in having me help you navigate your divorce, please hit my website, risingphoenixdivorcecoach.com. I look forward to working with you.